Beneath the world's oceans lie untold mysteries, secrets that took their tales to a watery grave, and none more so than the spookiest voyage of all time. It was on December the 5th, 1872, that the Mary Celeste was seen floating off the Azores Islands. Halfway between Washington and Portugal, in the middle of nowhere, nobody was manning the wheel. The cutlery and plates had all been washed. The sailors' pipes were left ready to be smoked. The main hatch was still battened down, with $80,000 worth of alcohol untouched in its barrels. But what really happened? The Canadian sea hunter Mike Fletcher is one of the only people to know the truth, and has even tracked down and dived the wreck of the Mary Celeste.
Whenever you hear these legends about ghost ships, there's hundreds of them, but at the very top of all of those stories is Mary Celeste. History told us that Mary Celeste would be found on what would be the south coast of Haiti. It was exactly where history said it should be. To get to be the guy who goes on an expedition with Clive Cussler to find the grave of Mary Celeste, to be part of its discovery was a big deal.
I mean, this is the legendary ghost ship of all time. The captain, his wife, little daughter, the crew, all gone.
Everything that's ever gone near it has seen only trouble and woe, and that's why we brought you.
That's right.
Okay, so all the trouble and woe is going to fall on my shoulders. I see.
What the captain of the Dei Grazia, Oliver Devoe, wrote in his ship's log has gone down in ghoulish folklore. December 5 begins with a fresh breeze and clear, sea still running heavy, but wind moderating. Saw a sail to the east, 2 p.m. Saw she was steering very wild and evidently in distress. Hauled up to speak to her and render assistance. At 3 p.m. hailed her, and getting no answer and seeing no one on deck, sent the mate and 2 men on board, sea running high at the time. He boarded her without accident and returned in about an hour and reported her to be the Mary Celeste, abandoned with about 3.5 feet of water in the hold.
Abandoned, floating in the middle of the ocean. Lots of evidence of the crew having been there right up to the final moments. But where are the crew? There's no sign of a struggle. There's no sign of piracy. What the heck? Where's the crew? What happened here?
The trader had been loaded at Pier 50 in New York's East River under the watchful eye of its skipper, 37-year-old Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Briggs was joined by his childhood sweetheart and wife, Sarah, 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and a crew of 7 men. Its 1,701 barrels of alcohol were sent off to Genoa in Italy. 10 people set sail on the Mary Celeste, and 10 men, woman, and child were never seen again.
So let's imagine the last voyage of Mary Celeste before it became the ghost ship legend. You've got a wealthy captain, owner of the vessel. You've got a man with a family, his wife and his 2-year-old daughter. They're headed to Italy from New York City. Sadly, they never made it to Italy. We know some of the final details of Mary Celeste because the ship's log was found on board. Final entry was about a week before the ghost ship was found adrift. We know that they knew exactly their location. They were only 6 miles off the Azores. Everything was going pretty much as planned. But that's where the story ends. There's no other account. There's no survivor. There's no one to tell us what were the final moments. How did the ship end up adrift with no crew?
After coming across the Mary Celeste lost at sea, Captain Devoe dreamed of a rich payday in a salvage corps, and somehow managed to drag the sinking ghost ship all the way to Gibraltar, 1,120 miles away. Only the big payday never came. The commission of the Vice Admiralty Court for salvage smelled a rat. The court was sure someone had paid off the crew of the Mary Celeste and murdered the officers and leave the ship and cargo ready to be conveniently salvaged and sold. The ghost ship was detained in Gibraltar for 87 days, and in the end Briggs was awarded an insulting £1,700 for saving the trader, nowhere close to the $80,000 he felt he deserved. It was then that the legend of the ghost ship grew and grew. It was said that the Mary Celeste was discovered sailing without a crew, but with bacon, eggs and coffee still hot on the galley table. But the phantom crew were nowhere to be seen. Some conspiracies were convinced the crew had mutinied, or that the captains of the Mary Celeste and the De Grazia plotted to share the salvage award in a giant scam. Others reckoned the crew cut and run in the ship's boat when an iceberg was seen heading right for the Mary Celeste. An iceberg in the warm waters of the Azores? Seriously? Or maybe the crew was snatched by a slave ship and died of fever. And then there was the idea that a giant octopus sucked the crew off the deck with his tentacles and dragged them into the abyss. The legend of the phantom ship may never have swept the world if it were not for Arthur Conan Doyle, the man who invented Sherlock Holmes. In a short story, Doyle had an ex-American Civil War soldier turned doctor called Joseph Jefferson take passage on the Mary Celeste to Portugal. He hoped the sea air would heal his terrible lung disease. Before sailing, an old black maid entrusted Jefferson with a mysterious black oval stone that once belonged to her ancestors. That's where things turned spooky. One morning at sea on the 6th day, the wife and young son of the captain of the Mary Celeste, Mr. Tips, vanished. The day after, the captain was found dead in his cabin. The crew mutinied and 3 weeks later anchored off the coast of Africa. There, all the white passengers and crew were killed, and the Mary Celeste cut loose to haunt the open seas forever. Only Joseph Jefferson's life was spared after it was realized that the black stone in his pocket was sacred. It turned out to be the lost ear from a statue worshipped in the largest hut of a nearby village and lost for centuries. Arthur Conan Doyle's story was a sensation. His made-up murder, mystery and voodoo were linked to the Mary Celeste forever.
While we'd all love to believe that there was maybe alien abduction or piracy, the facts don't indicate that. Mary Celeste was carrying a cargo of commercial alcohol, which is extremely volatile. And we know that some of the barrels of this alcohol were leaking into the hold. I think that the ship became extremely dangerous to the crew, and at some point they decided to open the hatches and let the fumes of this leaking alcohol escape. They all got into the yawl boat, and in the passing of time, the line that was tied to their yawl boat parted. The Mary Celeste sailed away and left all the crew in a really tiny yawl boat where they all perished over time and were lost, and set the legend of Mary Celeste on its ghost ship path.
Whatever the reality, finding ghost ships sailing under their own wind was actually not that unusual. Between 1887 and 1893, the American Hydrographic Office reported that no less than 1,628 ships were found floating derelict. That's 19 phantom ships every month. So was the Mary Celeste's reputation as the scariest ghost ship ever known fair? Some say she was cursed from the very start. In her maiden voyage to London, the captain, Robert McLennan, died of pneumonia before the ship had even left Canadian waters. Then the trader hit a ship in the English Channel, sinking it. As Mr. Cartwright put it, of all the unlucky vessels I've ever heard of, she was the most unlucky. The Mary Celeste became known as a bewitched ship. In the end, the Mary Celeste saw an inglorious ending, deliberately spiked on a reef off Haiti. Within a few years, pounding waves turned the ship into a wreck and then into a scatter of tiny memories. It was then that the phantom ship became a ghostly wreck, once and for all. Thanks for listening to our nighttime horror story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and clang that notification bell. Of all the terrifying tales of ghost ships under the world's seas, the Mary Celeste takes top prize. But as you've now seen, not everything was as history claims. Rick Watch has turned Ghostbuster to bring you the truth, because deep down, we care.